Right. Oh yeah.
Roger?
I ate it as a kid. I ate it like once or twice as a kid because it came in my little pumpkin jack-o'-lantern for
And you
trick
didn't
or
like
treat.
it.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I
See,
there-
I've
I-
got all of these like, ooh, Halloween, exciting, walk around, get candy, and I think my parents always let us eat the candy corn first because they wanted to save the good stuff. And so I associate the excitement of Halloween with eating candy corn.
I just remember 3/4 of my candy haul being that stuff. It would be candy corn. It would be what's the sugar things on the straws. I hated those.
Oh, sugar straws is what I
Like
call
they
them.
were like the stupid antacids that masquerade as candy. Those little tablet things.
You'd get those in your Halloween bag?
They were just like we considered good candy anything that was like even if it was the fun size, like a Snickers, a Kit Kat, a Crackle.
Pixie sticks. Pixie sticks. Is that what you're talking
Sticks,
about?
yes.
Yeah.
I used to sell them in junior
I
high.
used to love
I
those.
used to sell them. I was a dealer of Pixie Sticks.
What?
Sweet
Yeah,
tarts
you-
and
you-
spree.
You could buy like a big bundle, like at a store for like $10.
And then you'd sell them at
You just
school?
sell them for like 3 cents or a nickel each at junior
Nice.
high. I mean, it would take a lot of money. It'd take a lot of selling.
Roger Chang, Pixie Stick dealer.
You need your pixie stick fix? I gotta know a guy.
Listen, I got a line on some Pixie Sticks. They're coming in Thursday.
When you think about it, it's just like mostly white powder in a tube.
Grape? What are you kidding me? I can't get grape.
That's amazing.
See what I can do.
I think the most popular was the red, orange, and then the green.
When junior high basketball games, I would always get spree, the hard shell coated like tart candies.
Oh, I hated those too.
Ah, I love spree.
One year I did get a couple of those cherry cordials. I thought were kind of cool.
Chocolate covered cherries, yeah.
Those are good.
But the ones
Sometimes
with
chocolate covered
liquor in
cherries
it.
even come with cherries in them.
The ones you bite into and it has like rummy flavor
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. I love those. I love cherries.
No, I was a Sprees fan too. I'd get Sprees. I like
Can you
those.
still get spree?
Sprees probably gave me a lot of cavities when I was a kid. So
Yeah, they're real hard on your teeth, I think.
they're good. I liked them better in bottle caps. Those are terrible.
I like the root beer bottle cap.
Oh, I've never tried those.
Chewy spree candy by the pound. But they're chewy?
Yeah, those are okay.
Those aren't the same.
No, chewy Sprees are different than Sprees.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm thinking of root beer barrels.
Oh, root beer barrels. The wax
Those
root
I
beer
liked.
barrels.
Those
They're
were
like hard, individually wrapped candies that looked like little Donkey Kong barrels, but they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
root beer flavored.
All right, we're gonna tell you the secret history of net neutrality here in a moment. You guys ready?
Oh, control.
Control is coming your way, Roger. As soon as I widen up my screen here, there you go.
Woohoo! All right, hide.
All right, here we go.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, July 12th. Happy birthday to my wife. 2017, I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me, Scott Johnson is here, and we are going to talk today, Scott, about the secret history of net neutrality.
Yeah, I don't know the secret sauce quite yet, but all day you've been kind of teasing me about a pattern you found. It's very like Sherlock Holmes. I feel like
I've got like string and pictures of Verizon executives up on the wall, and I've cracked the code, Scott.
I should have brought a big mustache, but I'm gonna do this instead, just a finger.
No, we're going to go back and follow where all this started, because I think I figured out where it started, where the rhetoric began, and why we've gotten to where we are today. I don't know that this solves it or changes your mind, but it should help you understand the problem better. If you're wondering why, if somehow you missed it, several tech sites and apps have added messages to their services Wednesday, urging customers to object to the FCC's current proposal to eliminate open internet guidelines established in 2015. Many sites are linking to the FCC, which is taking comments on its proposal. Guidelines in question classify U.S. ISPs as common carriers in order to enforce rules against favoring one kind of traffic over another in delivering internet service. We're going to get into all of that in a little bit, but let's start with a few tech things you should know. 14 million Verizon subscribers records, including PIN codes, were exposed on an unprotected Amazon S3 server by an employee of Israel's NICE Systems. NICE provides customer engagement and anti-fraud services to 85 of the Fortune 100 companies and works closely with surveillance and phone cracking companies. Chris Vickery of security company UpGuard found the data in mid-June, privately told Verizon the data was secured within a week, and came apparently from a log file of calls to Verizon customer service, which was being analyzed by NICE Systems. So, Scott, there's a couple of different concerns here. You know, one is that PIN codes were there. Two is that a surveillance-connected company had this data, but apparently that is something Verizon trusts them with regularly. The good news is it was discovered by Chris Vickery, potentially before anyone else.
That's good, but 14 million subscribers. I don't know what that is percentage-wise of their total subscribership, but that is a lot of freaking people.
Yeah.
That's a scary piece of exposure. So
not nice.
No,
it was found on NICE. Yeah, and whoever that employee is at NICE Systems should be at least educated in how to properly put things on an S3 server.
Yeah, probably escorted nicely out the front door.
S3 corded.
Apple's partnering with Chinese Guizhou. I looked it up. That's the correct pronunciation.
Nice.
On the cloud big data to establish its first data center in China. That's kind of cool. The data center will help improve iCloud services for Chinese users, as well as comply with regulations requiring data on Chinese users being stored within China. So that's a thing you always hear about. These big companies have to adhere to this particular bit of law where they got to keep that stuff there. They can't have it on servers outside the country.
Which it is not great for how the internet is supposed to work. You should be able to put your data wherever it makes sense to put your data. And a lot of times storing it close to users is better for performance, but sometimes it's not. For various reasons. So this takes away a little flexibility. And the other thing Apple could come under the gun for is people question why the government wants this data located locally. They say it might be used for oppression, and Apple could be seen as partnering with that.
Yeah.
Starting now, anyone with an Oculus Rift headset can live stream from Facebook Spaces through the Facebook Live system. People can view your VR stream on Facebook. A virtual tablet shows what 2D viewers will see, sort of like a camera's viewfinder. Reactions from the audience come out of a tablet-like magic mirror. Comments will stack up next to that in VR. Features rolling out to Spaces this week and is only available on the Rift, at least for now.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I know that the future of Oculus and Facebook is definitely in the world of let's figure out a way to socialize as much as we can VR and VR technology. Totally on board with that. But this seems slightly dumb. I mean, I have zero interest in logging in and trying to watch these streams right now.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it would be like, hey, I'm in virtual spaces with a couple other friends, and I have this one friend who doesn't have a VR headset, but at least they can watch and talk to us.
Now, that's cool. I get that. But if you're doing, like, let's say you're, I don't know, you're live streaming. I'm trying to think of, you know, the advantage for the person seeing a live VR stream is that they see it in VR, right? They get to be in the virtual space. It's a lot of work to get to that right now. As it stands right now, these are not devices we just pop on our head and we're in. And the way Facebook works is this very sort of impulse sort of driven thing where I log in and I say, oh, my friend Tom is doing something in VR. Boop, put something on my head and I'm in. No, it doesn't work like that right now. Right now I got to go find it or get it out of its place, put it on my head, adjust it. Oh, shoot, I'm not calibrated. Something's wrong with this USB cable. I better reboot. Like, there's a lot of that going on. And that's my only reason why. It just doesn't feel like the reward is worth the work.
It's early days. Yeah. This is not going to be mass adopted.
No question. Microsoft ended support for Windows 8.1. Late days. End times, you might say.
Yeah, for 8.1 it is.
This is on Tuesday, leaving the Windows 10 mobile OS as its only supported phone operating system. Ad Duplex estimated 20% of Windows phones will run or do run Windows 10. Support for Windows 10 mobile ends in 2018 with no word on an upgrade path.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of headlines today say, this is the end of Windows Phone. And if you don't read past that, you're not getting the whole story. They're saying that because 80% of Windows Phone users don't use Windows 10 yet, and they just ended support for Windows Phone 8.1. So it is a big move. Microsoft has not pulled support for Windows 10 on mobile, so people should either upgrade or upgrade their phone. That said, Microsoft also isn't doing a lot to support Windows Phone, and we don't know if there's going to be a fall creators update for Windows Phone. It doesn't sound like there will be. So, Microsoft's intentions regarding phones are still sort of up in the air.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, there's more to it. They're still supporting it, sure, but any other phone / OS maker for phones, whether it be Google or even, obviously Apple, but even older phones that are still being supported. Usually, what happens is they're talking about new releases and exciting new features and fancy new this and fancy new that, and this is Microsoft going, well, we're ending support for 8.1. 10 still works, and that's it. Yeah. So I understand people being skeptical about what may be the future for those things.
Scientists at the University of Washington have trained a neural network to match the mouth shape of a video to fit whatever audio is attached to it. I'll explain that a little more in a second. The demonstration took a video of President Obama. So he was saying one thing. Let's say he's talking about Syria, and then they replaced it with audio of sentences he had spoken years before, maybe talking about healthcare, right? The neural network grafted and blended mouth shapes into the video so that the new video matched the old audio. One potential application could be to improve video conferencing. So if you've got lag and somebody's mouth isn't catching up with their words, this could keep them looking like they are. Scientists were careful not to put any words in the president's mouth that he did not in fact say, although that is a worry, is that people could use it for that. They did indicate that there's a blurriness in the mouth region of their videos, probably not detectable to the human eye, but could be detected by programs if you want to make sure that a video is real or not.
Well, to me, it's the Photoshop of video. We all sort of knew this stuff would still, there's been other innovations, and this stuff's going to be coming where we can manipulate video in the way that we can manipulate standard images. Yeah. And even though those are scientifically proven sometimes to be fake, oftentimes the damage is done if you've got somebody saying some stuff out of context or,
Well, and you can actually fake people's audio now too. There's other technology that does that. So you combine those two together and you can make all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, you may have a whole episode of the show one day where you talk just about the future of not being able to tell
reality.
Yeah. It's super interesting. Activision Blizzard finishes things out today and has announced 7 teams and owners for its Overwatch League, which we've been talking about since BlizzCon of last year. This will locate esports teams for the game in various cities before the end of the year. Teams in Boston, New York, LA, Miami, Orlando, San Francisco, Shanghai, and Seoul will all begin competition. Among the team's owners are Robert Kraft of the New England Patriots, who owns the Boston Overwatch team, Jeff Wilpon of the New York Mets. That's right, the Mets are still a team. Mets fans love hearing that. Owns the New York Overwatch team, and from esports, Noah Winston of Immortals will run the LA team, and Annie Miller of NRG Sports owns San Francisco team. Competition begins in LA, and I just saw Shaq posted, who's a big part of investor part of NRG, just posted a video on Twitter of him getting all psyched and excited about the Northern California effort that team's going to make. So anyway, exciting times for Overwatch.
I can't wait for the logos and the mascots. And buy myself some LA Overwatch team gear.
Mm-hmm. Wait in line out in front of Soldier 76 Field and
Soldier 76 Field. That should be a Chicago team. Yeah,
really should.
Yeah, Staples Center with my whatever things. Yeah, will they name their teams around characters, do you think?
I don't know. I have a feeling not. I think it'll probably follow. Well, this is a really good question, and this we don't know, because the way it's worked in the past is teams are not necessarily geographically pinned. It's
right.
Like we're just Cloud9, so they're Cloud9, and then each player on the team maybe has a weird moniker or whatever, but nobody's actually done the city thing. So that's going to be fascinating. Will they be the Los Angeles, Spinners, or whatever the names are going to be? I don't know, but I'm very curious to find out. And if they do, will that help build the sort of regional fan obsession thing, or will that not make it?
Ethan Cade said Overwatch starter jackets for your favorite team. Absolutely. I'm on board. I'm in. Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes just to keep yourself up to date efficiently, be sure to subscribe to Daily Tech Headlines at dailytechheadlines.com. Available on the Amazon Echo domestically. I can't get word out of Amazon why it won't come to the UK and other places. But available on the Amazon Echo as a flash briefing and also on the Anchor app at anchor.fm. And that is a look at our top stories. All right, Scotty, are you ready for me to tell you the secret history of net neutrality?
I feel like, okay, Bernstein and what's the other guy's name? Go for it.
Woodward, I think is the person. This is more of a story. This is the background that you need to know. Now, you'll need to know two things to understand where the story is going to end up. And that is the definitions from the 1996 Telecommunications Act that differentiate a telecommunications service from an information service. All right? So you ready?
Yep.
A telecommunications service is the transmission between or among points specified by the user of information of the user's choosing without change in the form or content of the information sent and received, right? So that's telephone. Right. I choose to call Scott. I talk on the phone. I create the content. The telephone company doesn't have anything to do with who I'm calling, where I'm calling, when I'm calling, and what I'm saying. That's
They're like the air that carries the vibrations of my voice to you when we're having a conversation.
They just provide the wire and the connection.
Right.
An information service is the offering of a capability for generating, acquiring, storing, transforming, processing, retrieving, utilizing, or making available, basically, information via telecommunications and includes electronic publishing, but does not include any use of any such capability for the management, control, or operation of a telecommunications system. So an information service is cable television. You're not making phone calls over it. You have a company who says, we have all the channels. We have all the programs. We have the video on demand. You are a subscriber and we tell you what you can get. We decide what channels. And you can subscribe to different packages to get those channels, but we are offering a capability for making available information.
Yeah, and forget for just a second that cable then also in a modern context gives you internet access, which can give you the cable.
We're not to internet yet. We're in 1996, exactly. Right? The internet is just that thing that the beard guy with the beard in the back room does. So there's telecommunications, which is your telephone. There's information service, which is cable. Easy, right? I get it. Two different things. All right. So throughout the 1990s, internet service providers were considered telecommunications providers. So they were a common carrier, and mostly because your internet was dial-up, right? It was over the telephone lines. So it was a telecommunications service. Telcos, because of that, because of the rules of Title II common carrier, had to offer their internet networks wholesale to other service providers. You may remember those days when a DSL provider, back when DSL was super high speed because it was 1.5 megabits per second, right? DSL was provided by other companies besides your phone company. Your phone company would be the main provider, but you get Earthlink DSL, you could get Sonic DSL, you get all these different DSLs because the law said, hey, this is a telecommunications service. And just like with the phone wires, if you own the wires, you have to open them up and sell them wholesale. You can have your own service on those lines, but you have to open it to everybody else.
Right.
So you with me now?
I'm totally with you.
All makes sense.
Yep.
Internet is being provided over telephone lines, runs by the same rules as telephone. Well, March 14th, 2002, this all changes. The FCC decides that, hey, you know what doesn't run over telephone lines? Cable. You know who's providing internet? Cable. That's not a telecommunications service anymore, is it? So the FCC decides March 14th, 2002, that cable modem service is an information service and not subject to common carrier regulation. This is where the trouble starts, Scott.
Yeah. March 14, 2002 is ground zero as far as I'm concerned for this issue.
This is what starts the trouble because now suddenly we have internet that's carried on phone wires. That's not an information service, but internet carried by a cable provider is an information service. And as will become common in this story we're telling, everybody sues. So this goes through the courts. And 3 years later, June 27th, 2005, the United States Supreme Court upholds the FCC ruling that cable modem service is an information service. The FCC gets to define this stuff, the Supreme Court says. And without any very clear evidence that they're wrong, we're going to let them define it. So the FCC takes that win, and of course on August 5th, 2005, just a week or so later, the FCC classifies wireline broadband internet service as an information service. So they were able to make the modem thing stick. They're like, great, well, we're not going to have two definitions. Everybody's an information service. They gave telcos 1 year to wind up those common carrier deals that had required them to open their networks to other DSL providers and removed the restriction on providing enhanced services. Now that is the next step. They said, great, we've got all this information service classification now. Everybody's on board. Great. And guess what, you guys? You can do those enhanced services that you want, where you charge people to deliver information. You couldn't do that as a common carrier under telecommunications. Now your information service, you can do that.
Yeah. And 05, so 05 dark time. As far
05, FCC finally does that. Well, guess what? Suddenly, and you can guess who was asking them to do all this. Suddenly, in October 2005, SBC, Southwestern Bell's CEO, Ed Whiteacre, he eventually became the CEO of AT&T when they merged, said, now what they would like to do is use my pipes free, but I ain't gonna let them do that because we have spent this capital and we have to have a return on it. So there's going to have to be some mechanism for these people who use these pipes to pay for the portion they're using. Why should they be allowed to use my pipes? The internet can't be free in that sense because we and the cable companies have made an investment, and for a Google or a Yahoo or Vonage to expect to use these pipes for free is nuts.
Yeah, these pipes. I like the term pipes. It's always
so suddenly from the internet is like telecommunications. I tell you what I want, what I want you to connect to, you connect and deliver me what's on the other side, and that's it. Suddenly it's their pipes. Now let's ignore that subsidies and pole easements and all kinds of things has been provided by the government to help them build these out. Suddenly it's my pipes and I want Google to pay for them. February 2006, John Thorne, a Verizon senior vice president and deputy general counsel, says the network builders are spending a fortune constructing and maintaining the networks that Google intends to ride on with nothing but cheap servers. It is enjoying a free lunch that should, by any rational account, be the lunch of the facilities providers. That's our lunch. You can't have it.
Wow. I'd never heard that quote before. That's insane.
It's a great quote. I know.
Good one.
This is what started people freaking out about net neutrality, right? The information service reclassification was just a precursor that these guys were waiting for to say, great, now we can provide enhanced services. Let's start the campaign to make it seem like Google and Yahoo are out here using our service that we built for free, and then we can get everyone on board to us charging them. And then we can charge both ways. That's not the way it worked. Everybody freaked out. And, you know, we on Buzz Out Loud started talking about this like, wait a minute, Google does pay. They pay to access the internet. That's how the internet works. Everybody pays to get on the internet, and then you interconnect and you come up with deals. Well, in 2007, so a year later, Comcast was caught interfering with BitTorrent packets. Let's leave aside whether they should be killing BitTorrent packets. Let's assume that all of these packets are Linux ISOs for the moment, all right? Comcast was interfering with BitTorrent packets, and the FCC, the Republican-chaired FCC, voted to punish Comcast for discriminatory network management practices. Okay, they're like, look, you're an information service, but you can't do that. That's not okay.
They were literally discriminating between data packets. They were saying,
exactly,
well, data packets we are going to treat differently. Then we're
going to do some deep packet inspection. We're going to see, oh, is that a BitTorrent packet? Let's kill it, right?
Yeah.
FCC said, we don't care why you're doing that. That's a discriminatory. You can't do that. Well, Comcast got that FCC decision overturned in court because the court said, we don't see the legal basis. You said they're an information service, and now you're saying they can't do that, but we don't get where you get to say that. So in 2010, the FCC finally created rules against blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization. And this was a continuing effort from the transition of administrations. It started under the Republican administration and was finished in the Democratic administration. And of course, Verizon sued and got those 2010 rules thrown out. And the court said, we have no problem with these rules as such, but if Verizon is an information service, the Telecommunications Act lets them do all these things, blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization. That's what an information service does. The only way you can do this is if you classify them as a Title II common carrier, a telecommunications service. So in 2015, the FCC said, fine, okay, We're going to reclassify ISPs as common carriers to give the appropriate legal basis recommended by the courts. And let's be clear, through all of this, Verizon and AT&T don't really want to block and throttle. They want to be able to charge for things. They don't even want to be able to charge for everything. They want the freedom to be able to charge the big companies, the Googles and the Yahoos, right? And everybody agrees, like, pretty much, mostly paid prioritization and blocking and throttling should be off the table. It's all about the wiggle room. So this is a big thing in 2015 because making them common carrier suddenly changes the ball game and really puts things against them being able to do any kind of enhanced services.
Yeah, I can, and here's the funny thing. I kind of understand the idea of somebody building something and then others coming to that thing and enterprising on top of it and doing well. Google, Yahoo, whoever. They came to the internet and said, well, all right, the internet needs these things, so we're going to do this stuff. And in the minds of these carriers, they're like, well, you're doing that on top of our stuff. It should be us who's doing that, or you should be paying us more if you're going to do it. Like, part of me, there's a practical side of me that hears that and goes, okay, I kind of get it. If you're going to build I don't know, let's say you own a lake and somebody wants to come ice fish on your lake. Well, maybe they,
yeah. Well, and that's the way the ISPs were pitching it. The problem is the ISPs don't own the whole lake.
Right.
They own one portion of the lake by their dock. Now, Google went and built a dock on the other side of the lake and says, great, we want to deliver things to your dock so the people on your side of the lake can get them. AT&T said, well, you got to pay us to get to our dock. And Google said, but you're the only dock. there's no other dock.
Yeah.
If these people ordered the stuff and I need to deliver it to them. So it's toll setting, right? And you can decide, like, hey, you know what? It makes sense. If you own the dock, but you can also decide whether that's the way you want the system to work. Because remember, the internet isn't owned by the carriers. The internet is made up of all of the people connected to it. It's the carriers, it's Google, it's Yahoo, it's Cogent, it's Level 3. It's all of the people who either help packets get to the customers or deliver the packets that the customers want or mingle them between the two. That's the internet. The internet isn't owned by any one person, and the networks that the carriers built that allow some of those packets to get to their customers were aided by the government in quite a large way.
It's just like, it's like trade routes in the 1400s. That's how this feels to me, and that's where I start to break from it. I understand the idea that if I have to get through your gate to get anywhere, you feel like you've got some sort of important point of contact, being the owner of that gate. But then I don't have competitive advantage to go to somebody else's gate. You're the only gate.
Yeah.
So if you're the gate and you just happen to be the thing that's called the gate,
the carriers want the legacy of being a monopoly.
Yeah.
To stay. Right. They don't want any competition. That's why they wanted to be reclassified as information services, so they didn't have to open up their networks to anybody else. They don't want it to be easy for anyone to go and attach their cables to poles and build out new networks. They want to keep their advantage as a legacy monopoly, but they also want the advantages of being treated as if it's a competitive marketplace.
So let me ask you this question. There's a little one I want to slide in here. How much of these companies, when they make their own services to compete with the likes of Google, Apple, whoever, whether it's TV services or phone services or game streaming services or whatever it is, the more they do those, the more I see it come out of Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, and so on, the more I think that they're doing that so they have more ammo for cases where they want to claim they are information services, because literally they are building and making things very similar to all these other people who don't also control the infrastructure or don't control the gateways. And how much of that do you think is them seeing profit opportunities and customer opportunities, or are they just seeing this as, all right, well, the more information servicey things we do, the better off we're going to be in court when this gets challenged from here till forever?
No, I don't think it's about the court, because the court has several times. The most recent in February of 2015, when the carriers were actually fighting against the FCC rules, the court says, look, the FCC gets to define who's an information service provider and who isn't. We're basically going to let them decide. So when the FCC made cable modems an information service, they said, that's fine. The FCC gets to do that. When the FCC made everybody a common carrier, they said the FCC gets to decide that. They get to decide who does what. It would take a hell of a court case to get the courts to determine that. What the carriers want is they want the freedom to do anything they might want to do. They don't necessarily have plans to make use of all that power. They want as much power as possible, as much freedom as possible to implement their business plans. When the FCC made them common carrier, one of the things you'll hear them say is, it's rate regulation. It's burdensome regulation from the 30s because the Telecommunications Act has its roots in a 1930s version. Well, that's some of it's true, some of it's not. Here's what the FCC did. They said, look, you're Title II, you're common carrier, so that we can block paid prioritization and throttling, but we will forbear, which means they say these parts of Title II don't apply to you. We will forbear most of the regulations. So they did prohibit ISPs from blocking or throttling lawful internet content and to prohibit paid prioritization. They said you cannot make any unjust or unreasonable discrimination in rates, practices, or offering of services, and you must apply just and reasonable rates. Now, that is where the real rate regulation comes in. It's not telling you what you can charge. It's not that part of Title II, but it's saying a customer can complain if they think your rates are too high and ask the FCC to intervene. And if the FCC doesn't intervene, they have the right to sue you in court. What the current FCC chair, Ajit Pai, says is that's fine. That should be handled by the Federal Trade Commission, not by the FCC. So he's doing several things in this proposed rulemaking. He says, I want them to not be common carriers anymore, which will remove the legal basis for prohibiting paid prioritization and throttling and remove the ability of customers to complain about rates and practices and put that under the Federal Trade Commission.
Yeah. Feels like it's I feel like we're not much further than we were in 2002. Do you feel like we're, I mean, today, I'll tell you what, you go anywhere on the internet today. I went to Twitch this morning to set up a stream and it had a huge red banner. Support net neutrality. Blah, 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 blah. Here's a link. Here's a place. Here's all the stuff. And I thought, well, that's funny. And I went to a few other sites and they're all doing it today. They're all doing it. Obviously, it is in the best interest, it seems like, of everybody I know, except for these carriers.
Well, yes and no. I mean, essentially what happened was the internet was being regulated the way it makes sense to a lot of people to be regulated. It's a point-to-point system. I want to get the information off that server over there. And so I tell you, go to google.com and get me that information. That's the definition of a telecommunications service. The telecommunications service is not storing that information. They're not making available any of that information. They're just providing point-to-point communication. I tell you the domain name. The domain name system figures out the IP address, sure, but I'm the one telling you where to get the information, and then you are delivering the information to me without changing it, without storing it, without deciding whether I should get it or not. That's the definition of a telecommunications service. But they were worried about all this Title II regulation, so they wanted, especially the cable companies, wanted the more favorable regime of an information service. So they said, hey, give us that. But when they gave them that, suddenly it caused all these other problems of like, well, wait a minute, now you can do paid prioritization, blocking, and throttling. We can't allow that. And to be honest, most people agree. Even many network executives at telecommunications company agree, yeah, that's not how the internet should work. We don't want paid prioritization, blocking, or throttling. But we do want freedom to do these other edge case things, and we don't want to be blocked. So we want to be an information service. We promise we use our powers for good, right? And then other people, especially companies that are providing their services over the internet, like Google, et cetera, are saying, well, hold on a minute. You say you won't do anything wrong, but let's classify as a telecommunications service because that makes sense. And it also gives us the advantage of you never being able to do anything about our stuff.
Right. So the only way to deal with somebody who says we promise not to use our powers for good and not evil is to have some kind of regulation system of checking I mean, regulation can be a dirty word sometimes, but
yeah,
whatever the term is. I mean, what is to stop Comcast from throttling other kinds of traffic or throttling BitTorrent traffic or whatever?
Here's why I wanted to tell you the 15-year history of this.
Yeah,
is I think it has become evident that the FCC is not the best agency to determine this because they're battling back and forth between two definitions that don't apply to the internet. It's not an information service, not actually a telecommunications service either, although you can run a telecommunications service on it. Probably more like a telecommunications service in my way of thinking, but the laws that were written in the 30s and in 1996 have unintended consequences that you then have to go through this dance of forbearing things. it needs new legislation. And in fact, John Thune, senator from South Dakota, drafted legislation in 2015 that would have outlawed the online practices of blocking, throttling, and paid prioritization of legal content over broadband cable and wireless connections. And corporate owners of broadband infrastructure couldn't use their role to manipulate the internet experience. Thune believes the biggest threat to network investment may be this instability where, hey, Ajit Pai just changed the rules, but guess what? In 4 to 8 years, there might be a different commissioner from a different party, and he'll change them back.
Yeah.
And if anything causes you to be conservative on investment, it's not knowing what the rules are going to be down the road.
Yeah. Also, big shocker. Legislation from the 30s modified in 1996 may or may not apply to what the internet is today. How weird. Like, yeah. Nobody was thinking about things like Netflix or giant broadband situations like that where you're moving huge amounts of data. Like, none of that was thought of. So yeah, they got to, that's absolutely correct. Once in a while, you got to say, you know, I like this old shirt. It's a nice shirt, but there are weird holes in it. I got stains that won't come out. Time to get a new shirt.
And I get it. The shirt store is pretty dysfunctional these days. So if you can not go to the shirt store and you can mend the shirt, I understand the motivation.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just have to realize you need the new shirt. And that is the unfortunate situation we're in, which is why there's no easy answer to this. The FCC is going to change the classification. It is very clear that it doesn't really matter what anyone does today. And that's not to say you shouldn't make your opinion known. You absolutely should. But they seem very determined. And then it's going to be another football of people suing and pulling it through courts, and it's going to be bad for everybody. So we had Coker in our analyst Slack point out battleforthenet.com. It's a great site, dense with info, well laid out, detailed, pre-populated email responses, though you can change those if you don't agree with what they're saying for you. And they'll connect you by phone or provide a phone number for you to contact your legislative representative. So I'm not telling you what to say, but if you care about this issue, you should say something, and you can go find that at battleforthenet.com, or just look up your local representative if you're a U.S. Citizen who can vote, and let them know what you think about this.
Well said, and fine advice. And do you think, one final prediction from Tom Merritt, the internet's tech maven, do you think in 15 years we'll be fighting over whatever the new legislation is because it didn't foresee the changes or the technological leaps? Or
yeah, whenever there's a new tech, it takes forever. You know, the Telecommunications Act of 96 was talking about cable, which came around in the 70s. So it always lags behind. And I'm not saying that it's a silver bullet. Well, let's just make legislation, because we all know how hard that is to make. But at a certain point, you got to stop dancing around the issue and point out, like, look, the FCC shouldn't be making legislation. That I get that they're trying to do an end around and they're trying to do a workaround, and it is not working. It is absolutely not working.
Yeah. Well, clearly we're headed towards some sort of something, and I'm very curious to see how it ends up. But you know, you've basically laid out the best 15-year history that I've heard about this subject. So I hope people at home, you know, if you were,
I hope they find it helpful. Thanks to everybody who participates in our show in all the different ways. DiamondClub.tv, in chat, on the subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. It definitely helps us figure out how to put this stuff together for you today. One person who participates is Mike Range, who does a monthly entertaining roundup of the tech news. If you get tired of all of this stuff and you just want to smile about something, you got to read monthly Tech Views. And here's Mike to tell you a little bit about his latest posting.
Hi, I'm Mike Range, and like it or not, there's another monthly Tech Views ready for your consumption. Here's a little sample. In China, users of bicycle sharing services are expected to double to 50 million this year. Meanwhile, here in the US, 50 million of us are expected to just leave that French fry on the floor because bending over in the backseat of our Uber is too much effort. You can read the rest of the monthly Tech Views, including a War Games pun I'm unreasonably proud of, at dailytechnewsshow.com. Real tech stories, really shaky analysis.
Thank you, Mike. And of course, Mike has some ebooks that collect all that stuff together, so go check that out at dailytechnewsshow.com. Thank you, Scott Johnson, for joining us and providing the sounding board for me to slap all the history off of you today.
No, I appreciate it just from the standpoint of this stuff can get really confusing. And in some cases, I think some parties involved want it to be more confusing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that we just sort of throw our hands up and go, all right, fine, whatever. I can't control any of this. But I think today was really good. And I'm always happy to be educated at your feet or wherever you are. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, please just sit up. It's fine. I'll put some shoes on too.
If people want to follow more of what I've got going on in the world, you can find me at frogpants.com. Scott Johnson on Twitter. Got a few cool projects coming up, but I'll be here every Wednesday as well. So once again, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and if you find this kind of topic valuable, what we're doing here valuable, we don't take advertising. We are not subsidized by anybody's viewpoint except our own and you. At patreon.com/DTNS. That's entirely how we're funded. Our hope every month is that we just get one patron more than the previous month. So thank you to everyone who sticks with us, and a big encouragement to those who want to make this show continue to go to patreon.com/DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. We're at facebook.com/dailytechnewsshow, and our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Justin Robert Young. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the FrogPants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Nice.
Thanks, Ace.
Really good. I learned a lot.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I did. Because it's not like Bitcoin for me. I knew more about that.
Right. It's not quite that complicated.
But it's not always easy to understand the motivations, like where everybody was at different times during this argument over the last 15 years. Like, what was their point of view? And there have been times where I've gone, yeah, like I kind of get it. I get why these carriers are pissed. And then there are those times like, well, wait a minute, you can only be pissed so far. And then you start to realize, well, all right, the internet isn't what you're telling. Like they tell people the internet is a thing that it isn't. So
yeah. Well, because we've spent 15 years with workarounds. Like, you know what? There's a loophole here in this law that was not written for us. So let's drive a truck through it. Yeah. And then somebody goes, hey, you can't drive your truck through there. Hold on, get back there. You should be driving your truck over there. And then instead of saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we should build a road that everyone can drive on.
Or maybe it's hover cars now, or maybe it's a whole new way of thinking. Like that stuff has to happen. And I realize there's never like a utopian end game to these things. It's a constant battle forever. And that's probably good. At least I think it is. I don't think there's such thing as the perfect place to find where everybody's happy. So you just keep moving. But
the thing that stuck out to me when I made this timeline finally was the timing of and the strategy of we'll make cable modems information services. Cable industry pushing for that. Telcos hanging back. And then once they win in court saying, great, now we can make everybody an information service. And boom, within months, the telcos starting their campaign of like, hey, we're an information service. Everyone agrees. So no free lunch, Google. You don't get to just access our customers. We built this city on rock and roll and on wires. And it's a false narrative.
Yeah.
They didn't build their networks alone. They had help. Yeah. I'm not saying that they aren't their networks. They definitely own them, and they should be able to run them to a certain extent the way they want. But they're pretending as if, that they own the internet. And it's like, well, you had a lot of help running those networks from the governments of America. And you aren't the entire internet, but you've managed to luck into a position where you don't have a lot of competition, and you just got the FCC to change a classification to eliminate a lot of the other competition. So you're trying to get the best of both worlds. Hey, man, I'd love to get the best of both worlds too.
Yeah, well, that'd be great. What's it like in I don't know, what's a good example? Like in Korea, South Korea.
In South Korea, they made it easy for any company to run wires. So you can't stop we have all these pole access laws here. We're like, oh yeah, you can't run the poles without getting AT&T to come and move their cables. All these things that get in the way. In Korea, no. In Korea, everybody can run their wires. The government made it really easy. And so you have multiple fiber competitors. Apartment complexes sometimes will have 3 or 4 different fiber companies running their wires into the building. Now that doesn't sound that efficient, but it is competition.
Wow. Yeah.
And also, the government encourages it in a way that doesn't exist here.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, part of it is like, we had all that copper wire infrastructure that we tried for so long, still do probably, to make, to stretch it out as long as we can.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that government encouragement that you're talking about, Roger, it's not subsidies. It's not even unbundling. It's just basically saying, no, you can't stop someone from building a network just because you already built a network.
I'm just thinking how crazy it would get where, like, say, like a Comcast charges a popular destination like Google or whatever, and Google says, fine, we're going to roll out our whatever Google Fiber in these cities, and then just say anyone who's on Comcast can access any Google services. Because really, what people want the internet for is the Google, is the Yahoo, is the Netflix. And they
maybe not so much the Yahoo as it used to be, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but
your point's well taken. They want the content.
Yeah, it's that the content's what's driving them. If they can get it wirelessly, if they can get it over, another connection that isn't through a cable box, they'll do it.
Ethan Kane in our chat room says in South Korea there are ridiculous amount of wires run between the poles. He says it's almost he says it's hazardous, but yeah, I mean that's how they made competition possible. So there's probably a middle ground that needs to happen there, but you've got these carriers out there lobbying cities to prevent other networks from being built,
which is
the
total
opposite
BS.
of what you need. Yeah.
Which is total BS. Speaking of things, titles: Mr. Peabody and Sherman discovered net neutrality. Mr. Peabody. Not so
it's
nice.
2002, Sherman.
Not so nice for Ryzen. Windows hangs up its phone. Hey, you, get off my interconnect.
Sucker for a good interconnect joke.
Facebook Spaces on your face. Photoshop a video. Happy birthday, Eileen. Everything you wanted to know about the nets, but were afraid to ask. Are you with me? Asked Tom. I'm with you, says Scott.
All right.
Lines and tubes and
Tom
pipes.
says I'm with you. Scott says yes. Tom asks, yeah, I get it.
Hunting for net nutrias.
Net nutrias?
Nutrias, that rodent who looks kind of like a beaver and a capybara crossbred. They were brought over from Brazil, but they're all over the swampland in the south. They brought them over. In any case, next, fake a statement. Information as a service. The internet is a series of pipes.
You're just reading them now, aren't you?
These ISPs, Yahoos. The Mets are still a team.
Barely. Sorry, Mets fans.
Hey, why do you pick it on the Mets? I don't think they're having a bad season.
I don't know why. I think they're that team that just always gets.
Well, in the 60s, yes.
Yeah. But more recently, whenever when Jon Stewart was still on, he was always complaining about how his team, the Mets, were just sucking.
Well, that's it. Yeah, everybody always complains about how their team sucks unless they're winning.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but isn't that how you determine whether they're success? If they're winning?
Usually wins are the main.
Losses don't bring butts to the bleachers.
Well, unless you're the Clippers. For years, I know they're good now, but for years the Clippers sold lots of tickets, even though they weren't very good.
People needed something to do.
Then Steve Ballmer bought them, and they got good.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
That's are 39 and 47. They're not in last place, but they're not doing great.
Mr. Peabody and Sherman discovered net neutrality.
I would like to go, unless you guys object, with the secret history of net neutrality.
Yeah, I like.
Right.
Just because I feel like this is an important episode, and that is the least confusing title for the uninitiated.
100%.
Net neutrality, unconfusing for the uninitiated.
You're suggesting that as the title?
No, just a general, gentle, option. I wish Giggle Fiber would come out here. Why are they stuck in Monrovia and Arcadia? There has to be. Just need to move a little west.
Well, has to do with pole access and and impediments to rolling out your fiber, all that stuff.
When did FoxSports.com go pure video? It's all video.
Oh, weird. I never go there, so.
When they found it's cheaper to just do video and write original content.
I guess so. I mean, it literally.
Is it though? I don't think that's true.
I think
it's way more expensive to do video.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, they can just repurpose all their...
Oh, because they're already doing the video.
Yeah.
Then they don't have to pay writers.
Yeah, they're not doing original video content. This is all stuff from their various shows.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's just pages and pages of video. That's all it is.
No, I get what you're saying now, Roger. That's right. They're like, hey, why are we paying this web staff when all we need to do is post these videos that we're already making?
Neil, we like you, but it's cheaper to do it this way. I hope yourself to some free sodas on your way out. Where are you? Street address. Oh, I just put my zip here.
The problem with a lot of this stuff is that the right thing to do is also the tactic for the opposition. Right? Not changing the regulations and actually pushing for legislation is a slow business, even though that is probably the thing that you need to do and the thing that you've needed to do for 10 years. And everybody for 10 years is saying, yeah, but that'll take 10 years. Well, if we'd started trying to do it 10 years ago, maybe we'd have it. And instead, we have this ping pong game that's been going on since 2002. This isn't new. I think that was the biggest thing that I really realized in digging into this story today. It's like, this isn't brand new. Ajit Pai isn't the first one to change things. It's just it was a little bit under the radar in 2002 because not as many people used the internet.
Well, he'll be credited with the man who broke the internet, or at least the U.S. internet.
Nobody broke the internet. The internet's not broken yet.
Still working for now.
And I've said before, I don't think this change in regulation is going to be the thing that breaks the internet either. It just won't help. It will further the instability.
Yeah, good way of putting it.
Death by 1,000 cuts, or
cuts by 1,000 deaths,
or just uncontrolled hemorrhaging. What do you choose?
No, I don't think it's gonna. People underestimate quite often the pressure of public opinion. So even if the carriers get all their dreams come true, I mean, remember, it was legal for Comcast to throttle BitTorrent. They won a court case that made it legal for them to throttle BitTorrent. They stopped throttling BitTorrent because people complained to high heaven about it. So, you know, I'm not saying it's a guarantee that complaining will get a company to change, but it's a pressure. It's a thing that can happen, and it can stop some stuff.
Yeah, even in those cases, the market can, you know, I mean, if your reputation is so tarnished by poor corporate behavior, you are motivated to not do that, at least generally speaking.
Yeah.
Comcast is probably sick of being the evil Darth Vader of whatever.
You know what? As long as they can get away with what they need to make money, doesn't matter for them.
No, but that's what I'm saying. They could have kept throttling BitTorrent and got away with it and made money and had the RIAA and MPA on their side, and they didn't because public opinion was so vocal against them that they said, you know what, that's not worth it. That's good. That's going to harm us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it's not a guarantee. You can't say, oh, well, don't worry, we don't need any laws. Public opinion will solve everything, because no. But it is a pressure that I think gets discounted.
Yeah, I agree.
Ooh, Sonic. Oh, wait, 13.
Oh.
You're looking for an ISP.
Yeah.
Oh.
Burgers. Now I'm hungry.
It's really good.
I'm hungry, too.
Yeah. I'm trying to eat less.
You should eat before the show, Roger. You should make yourself eat before the show.
It's weird because I always assume the show's around noon.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's just like...
I eat at 11 o'clock.
Yeah. What do you do? What's your what's your caloric intake at 11? What do you do?
I generally, it's not always the same, but I generally have a salad that has like some kind of beans in it, some kimchi, lettuce, tomatoes, vegetables. And then sometimes I'll have some Dave's Killer bread. Sometimes not. Depends on how hungry I am.
Mm. Okay, interesting.
Ooh, I go to Sonic and they're saying, they say send letter to the FCC, pause for net neutrality day, pop-up window.
Sonic the ISP is?
Yeah, like right
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
go to their site, they have a pop-up.
No, that makes sense because Sonic is one of the ISPs that's running into the problem of, hey, we can't expand to the places we want to expand because the incumbents are keeping us from doing so with all of these bureaucratic hurdles and things like that.
Sonic's like this really prime. I mean, I don't even live there, but I know I hear about them all the time. They're this prime example of like figuring out a way to be competitive in that ultra weird closed down system, and customers love them, and you know, like you want that kind of thing to thrive and survive, and if they're being hindered, that's a bummer.
It's what I like to call legacy money.
Yeah, legacy money, like a legacy podcast.
Legacy money.
Legacy. That's
there you go.
Street signs. Is a dead end sign considered a street sign? I guess so.
Probably.
Okay, doke. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you got something out of today's show that helps you clarify your thoughts.
Yeah, I hope so too.
And may you have a pleasant rest of your Thursday or whatever day it may be where you are.